Hello everyone, this is Gene and I'm back with another video. So, I'm probably going to catch heat for this, or at least I'm anticipating catching heat for this. But you know what? I don't care. I am going to respectfully disagree with Eric July, Young Ripper 59 here. So, for those who are wondering, this is a tweet or two tweets he made, a pair of tweets in regards to the Lia Thomas situation, right? For those who may not know, Lia Thomas is a trans female swimmer, and she's been winning a lot of competitions because, well, she has a sizable biological advantage against her biological female opponents. Right now, I've made I think one or two videos touching upon the whole trans athletes and women's sports thing before, and my general stance is unless it is open competition where everybody agrees uh, to the situation and you understand where your advantages or disadvantages are going to be, I don't agree with just inserting trans female athletes into women's sports without the consent of those, I say rather consent and agreement of those female athletes. And I think ideally the best solution to the problem would be to have a trans female league and a trans male league, just how we separate men's sports and women's sports, right? But the reality is that at present there aren't enough trans athletes of either gender, trans male or trans female, to justify from a business perspective having separate leagues, right? Going from two, which is male and female, to now four, right? Which is why, at least to my understanding of this, these trans women in particular, you don't hear too much about trans men being allowed in male sports because they would be at a disadvantage. But um, with trans women being allowed into women's sports, right? The idea is that we'll just just let them compete with the girls, despite knowing that they have a distinct physical advantage uh, that women, by that biological women, uh, can I would say the majority of biological females cannot overcome without the use of drugs. I would say, generally speaking, you might have one or two biological women who are like just like really, really like genetically gifted and they work crazy hard and maybe they could measure up or even win. But the majority of even elite female athletes are not going to be able to compete and win against a trans female athlete at this time without the use of drugs, in my opinion, at least. So there's my sort of stance on that. So let's address Eric's two tweets here. Because on the one hand, I can understand where he's coming from, but I think that I have a perspective that maybe he doesn't have, or perhaps he does not take into consideration, right? And I'll explain why I respectfully but vehemently disagree with him here, right? So he says here, I'm not going to have exert more energy to protect women's sports than the women competing against Lia Thomas. They'd rather say nothing or remain in secrecy. That's because they think being called a transphobe is worse than their sport being ruined. And then the second part goes, and the whole afraid to lose scholarships or they're being too young is nonsense. If you sent Ben Shapiro to speak at their campus, I'm sure you'd have many of these brainlet leftists, including athletes, screaming and shouting their opinions with no fear of consequence. Okay, so I'm actually going to address the second tweet first. Because to me, this is a case of whataboutism. Ben Shapiro speaking at a campus does not put anybody at risk, with the exception of Shapiro himself, right? Nothing's at risk except for Shapiro. What's at risk is his time, his potential safety, because some of these protesters against him at campuses can be flat out rabid, right? Potentially money if he gets canceled, if the invite is canceled, which does happen at times. But whether you go and support him or you protest against him, no one's career is at stake. No one's grades is at stake. Nobody's chance at competing at the state championships is at stake, whether you're for or against. So I really don't understand his point here, and to me, it's a whataboutism. Because, again, unless you are Shapiro, you lose nothing either way, right? So I really don't understand his point here, right? Now, that's that. And now the first part, right? I actually do understand and to a point agree, or at least can understand, I say, his point of if you won't stand up for yourself, if you won't do anything to speak up or speak out, why should I? Part of me can understand that. Part of me can agree with that to a certain point. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying or demanding that he must speak up. It's his choice. And if he's made the choice that he's not going to speak up because they won't, that's his choice, right? But what frustrates me here, right, is this general tone of, they're they're to blame, right? Like because these female athletes won't speak up or they won't speak up enough in certain instances, that this is their fault, right? He even says, they would rather say nothing or remain in secrecy because they think being called a transphobe is worse than their sport being ruined. You have to understand that a lot of people don't speak up about things because they are absolutely terrified of what they could lose, right? You're basically asking these young women to be heroes, and you're not taking into account the fact that heroes are often sacrificed for what they believe in, right? You don't get that parade at the end of the day marking you as a hero. You're acknowledged later on, right? When you've taken that risk and lost everything, that you took a stand, but nobody acknowledges that at the moment. Very rarely is that acknowledged at the moment. Why do you think heroism and courage is incredibly rare? Because you're risking everything. You're asking them to take a risk that at present you're not taking, right? With all due respect to Ripa, him speaking out against them or deciding to not stand by them, right? Taking the stance of if you won't help yourself, I won't help you, right? He's not risking anything. He's not risking his podcast. He's not risking the Rippaverse that he's working on. It's very easy for him to say this when he's not at risk, right? And yes, before people bring it up, I know he was a collegiate athlete, right? But he no longer has a potential collegiate or potential potential professional sports career that is at risk, right? That's all in his rear view mirror. And that's another thing, in my opinion. You're asking these young women to have the mindset or the knowledge that time gives you, right? Ripa, I think, is in his early 30s. I'm 37. It's very easy to sit here as a 30 something year old who doesn't have to put anything personal on the line, anything you've worked toward recently that you've dedicated a lot of time, money, energy, and personal investment in that you've been working toward and criticize them, right? Because you're not losing anything, right? And you, because you are older, and because I'm older, right? It's easy to look at them and go, oh, they're young, right? It's easy to take this position of speak up, you should say something, when you've been through the ups and downs of life and you've experienced broken hearts and broken dreams and broken promises and you've lost things in your life, right? Maybe opportunities or relationships or whatnot, and you realize that, life goes on, right? That if you don't achieve your dream of being an athlete, a professional athlete or whatever it is, that life goes on. That life doesn't end, right, with what you were able to accomplish in college, right? These young people don't know that yet. All they know is what they have been working toward for their very short lives at the moment. All they know is that if if they don't win everything they've been working toward, right? Their potential, depending on their circumstances, right? Their potential way out of a bad neighborhood or a bad living situation, right? Their scholarship, their sense of identity as a person, whatever it is, and whatever they have tied into these competitions, right? They know that they could lose it all, not just in competition, which is scary enough, right? Because only one person gets to win, right? And only so many people get to compete. But they also know that if they do speak out, they're risking ever being able to compete again, right? So on top of the fear of potentially career-ending things like injuries, right? They now have to deal with the fear of, well, if I speak out, then I might lose my scholarship, or I might lose my spot on the team, or I might lose my what they feel is my one chance at greatness, or getting out of this hellhole that is my life, or whatever it is. And I have, because I work in the Office of Compliance and Diversity, I work in the dreaded diversity office, right? And I've sat with students who come forward about things that are happening that they're going through when they come to us about a situation. I've seen them literally sit and shake and fall to pieces in tears. Okay, in very serious cases, it is not easy to speak up and speak out when you know that, or you believe that your grade or your future or whatever it is at risk, right? And interestingly enough, while I cannot speak too much about it because of the fact that it's confidential, because it's part of an investigation, but I actually have spoken to female athletes. To make a long story short, not too long ago, an allegation came into my office, and my supervisor at the time was looking into them. Allegation that a coach was having inappropriate conversations and inappropriate interactions with students, with female athletes. So we get the names and numbers of the individuals who are said to have been directly contacted by this individual, and we follow up and we ask questions, right? We send emails, we leave phone messages. We're able to get a few of them on the phone. Guess what? Every one of them every one of them that we reached out to, right, either does not respond to our outreach, or the ones that do are willing to, they either go on record saying, hey, there's no problem, everything's fine, whatever you're talking about, there's any never happened. Or in the case of one individual, this individual was willing to, spill the drama and spill the tea, right? Well, this one, has a gripe against this one, and the coach took this person's side, and I think the coach and this person have a relationship that's a little bit too close, right? They're willing to spill the tea and gossip, but the moment we ask them, well, would you be willing to come in, have a further conversation, a further interview, would you be willing to go on record about this? Then it's not my place to say anything. It's not my place to say anything. Well, what about you speaking up for yourself, right? You discussing your own interactions with this particular person. Oh, my interactions with the coach were fine. I don't have any issue with the coach, and I can't speak for other people, right? Everybody plays the denial game or the I can't speak for someone else game, and I had no issue with it, right? Now, here's the thing: do I think, right, based on those conversations, that there might have been something inappropriate going on? Yes, I do. Right? Because you can tell by the way a person talks to you, by the way they answer certain things, by the way they won't answer certain things, by the tone of their voice. I think we've all experienced that person who's clearly lying, right? Or they're not being forthcoming, but you can't make them open up. That's what I would say a lot of those conversations with that particular issue were. And unfortunately, because these individual athletes did not want to come forward, didn't want to commit anything to paper, whatever was or is going on, at least at that time, we can't address it. People love to tell us things, and then they love to disavow any knowledge, right? They'll come report something, especially younger people, right? They'll come report something, and then when we're like, hey, can we interview you more, right? They'll be like, oh, no, 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 I don't want to be a part of this, right? Even when we say, hey, we'll protect your identity, you can report anonymously, we will only share your identity with people who strictly need to know. The accused would never know it was you. Nope, I've got nothing to do with this. People stay silent or they don't get involved out of fear. It doesn't matter whether or not that fear is real or imagined. The fact is that it's there and it holds them back. And it makes our job much more difficult because in the end, you cannot make somebody speak up, right? Because you can send them emails, you can leave text and voice messages, you can give them a message saying, we demand that you come to the office and speak with so and so at this time, and they just don't show, right? You can't make someone speak up. And I think that messages like this from Eric, which again, I'm not saying he has to stand up and play hero, but I do think that these messages uh, don't help, in my personal opinion. I don't think anybody's going to be encouraged to to speak up or speak out against Lia Thomas, right? I don't see how this in any way helps the situation. And to be fair, perhaps he doesn't want to help the situation. Perhaps just like me, he's expressing an opinion, right? And that's fine. That's fine. But there's nothing saying that I have to agree with his opinion, especially when I've literally sat with students who are shaking in their shoes and crying because they are so terrified about what might happen. And again, we are talking about people who are 19, 20, 21 years old. They don't have the benefit of that future knowledge of life goes on and that this is not the end. Even if the worst happens, your life is not over. They don't know that yet, right? To me, this type of stance, this type of very rigid stance, to me, it's like getting angry. And I'm not saying it's entirely similar, but to me, it's like getting angry at somebody who's in an abusive relationship and they're afraid to leave, and you're like, well, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just walk out the door? The door is right there. Just walk. Just leave. Without completely understanding that individual's situation and what holds them back, which is usually fear. Whether it's fear of reprisal, fear of rejection, fear of being found out, right? Fear of not being able to take care of themselves once they're out on their own. These are all very real fears, right? Now, how likely they are, again, is irrelevant. They're all very real fears, right? So it's like, what do you want people to do? How does taking a stance of I won't help you if you won't help yourself help them at all, right? That's my question. How does that stance of I won't speak up for you if you won't speak up for yourself help them to speak up or speak out? How does that help? I just don't see how it helps anybody in this situation who is having their spot taken by Lia Thomas or other trans female athletes who maybe were forced into the women's league instead of um, uh, accepted, right? Like this type of these two tweets don't give any advice about what these people should do, about other means of speaking up or speaking out. It doesn't do anything to assuage their fears. It just says, hey, you're in the wrong because you won't say anything, and doesn't take into account why they won't say anything. And again, from being the person who assists my supervisor in investigations, I understand the frustration of why won't they just commit? We could do something if they would just commit. But the thing is that trying to make them commit, trying to make them go on record, doesn't make them go on record, right? It's just one of those frustrations that you have to live with when you're in this type of profession. In the end, it's up to them. It's up to them. And usually what makes a person come forward is that whatever situation they are in, it is so bad that they lose that fear, or at least that fear of whatever retaliation or reprisal is lessened, right? And whatever they are going through or experiencing is scarier than the potential of retaliation or any sort of adverse reaction, you could say, to them filing a report. You know who often make allegations and reports and who have no problem putting their name to paper? Faculty. You know why? Because they're older, they're more experienced, they also have authority, they have tenure, right? They have a lot less to lose, and so they're much more willing to make an accusation or report something and put their name to paper, right? Those are advantages, age, employment status, that these students don't have. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying you have to agree with them. I think they should speak up and speak out. But I also understand why they are hesitant to. And I don't believe messages like this, while I may agree with part of it, actually help with the whole getting them to speak up and speak out thing, which I believe is what he would want to see, right? Them speak up about this. But saying, I won't help you because you won't help yourself. Okay, well then, they remain unhelped. And the situation never gets resolved, or it gets worse. So nothing changes, right? That's the thing. Nothing changes. Nothing gets addressed. Nothing gets resolved, right? And that's pretty much my issue with this. And again, I'm not saying he has to play hero. He doesn't want to play hero. He doesn't have to. But if you're going to criticize people for not speaking up, or for not behaving the way you feel they should, or the way you think you would have done when you were a collegiate athlete in your 20s, at least try to understand why maybe they are not as brave as you believe they should be, or perhaps as brave as you believe that you would have been if you were in that situation yourself. Because that's another thing. It's very easy, like I've said earlier, to say, or rather, it's very easy to look back and, sort of um, uh, idealize ourselves in our youth, right? If I were in that situation, or if I hadn't been in that situation, I would have spoke up. I would have risked everything, right? We don't know that though. Eric doesn't know what he would have risked. I don't know what I would have risked if I was a 20-year-old again. And something that I loved was potentially going to be taken from me if I spoke up about something. Right? That's the beauty of being the Monday morning quarterback. You get to have an opinion but you don't have to deal with any of the consequences, right? This is what I would have done, but you didn't do it because you're not in it and nothing's being asked of you. We are talking about people who have something very important to them that is a very real risk if they speak up and speak out. I think that whatever position you are on, just please try to remember that. Right? Speaking up is not easy. Taking that risk is not easy. Right? And messages like this don't make it any more uh, welcoming. Right? Again, I highly doubt anybody who is competing against her who happens to come across his tweet is finally going to find their courage and go, I'm going to go to the compliance office, or I'm going to go to the athletics office, or I'm going to make a Twitter statement saying that this is wrong. Nope. That's probably not what's going to happen. What's probably going to happen is that they clam up even more because they feel like they would get no support. So again, I really don't see how a stance like this actually helps anyone or anything. And to Eric's point, perhaps he's not trying to help. If that's the case, well then he's doing a great job because I don't see how it helps. Right? But yeah, I mean, I know this is rambly and all over the place, but this is the way I see it. And again, because people always think that if you criticize a person who has a larger following, you must be trying to punch up. No, I'm not trying to punch up. I'm not trying to start a fight. It's just a respectful disagreement. I disagree with his take on this. Simple. I'm not looking for a confrontation. I might get one, but it's not what I'm looking for. I'm just a person on the internet who's able to express an opinion on this particular topic because my job isn't at risk. Just like Eric. He doesn't lose anything for standing against them, and I don't lose anything by being sympathetic toward them, which is what makes our position so easy and their position so damn difficult. But anyway, that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day and night wherever you are. Bye.